Praise the Lord. Mark chapter 1, verses 16 to 20. The first 4 disciples are called.
As he was walking along by the lake of Galilee, he saw Simon and Simon's brother Andrew casting in a net in the lake, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Come after me, and I will make you into fishers of people." And at once they left their nets and followed him. Going a little further, he saw James and son of Zebedee and his brother John. They too were in their boat, mending the nets. At once he called them, and, leaving their father Zebedee in the boat with the men he employed, they went after him.
The word of the Lord. So grace and peace, dear brothers and sisters. This reading that we heard from today, when the first 4 disciples are called, we see this dramatic abandoning of everything, that they're in the middle of their work and Jesus calls them and they just leave. They leave everything. First, Simon and Andrew, they're in the middle of doing something. They're in the middle of casting a net, so they're throwing the net out. And Jesus says, "Come after me," and they leave the net. They don't even draw it in, it doesn't even say. And they follow him. The second pair of brothers, James and John, they're mending the net. Because they're not throwing the net, they're mending it. So because the nets, when you go fishing, it gets damaged as you catch all the fish with the weight, it tears. So they're mending all the things. So it's a little bit more intricate work. And then Jesus calls them, and they leave the net, but not only the net, they also leave their father in the boat. And they follow with the men he employed, so all the colleagues, all the people they knew, and they go after him. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 to 26.
Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wants to be a follower of mine, let him renounce himself and take up his cross and follow me. Anyone who wants to save his life will lose it, but anyone who loses his life for my sake will find it. What, then? Will anyone gain by winning the whole world and forfeiting his life? Or what can anyone offer in exchange for his life?"
Right. So Jesus says, no one who wants to be a follower of mine can be a follower of mine unless he renounces everything. So the topic for today is detachment. To be detached. Okay. We're all called to have a certain detachment from everything. We heard from the first reading from Mark 1 that we should be detached from the work we do. Okay, so the fishing. So we need to have a certain separation from that. We shouldn't be totally dependent on that. We should be detached from even the tools we use, like the nets or the phones. We have to have a kind of separation from these things. We should even be detached from the people we work with. We should even be detached, not just from the people we work with, but from even our own family. All right? And our phones. So we need to keep a distance from these things, all right? This is very challenging, all right, to be detached. It's easy to talk about. It's easy to say that, we all have to be detached. We have to keep a certain separation. But it's not easy to practice. It's easy to say, not easy to practice. Jesus even goes so far to say, when he's talking about detachment from people, in Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 27.
Great crowds accompanied him on his way, and he turned and spoke to them. Anyone who wants to come with me without hating father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, and his own life too, cannot be my disciple. No one who does not carry his cross and come after me can be my disciple.
So this is very extreme. So now this is even a little bit more than just the detachment. Here, Jesus is saying, anyone who comes to me without hating father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, and his own life too, cannot be my disciple. So this is very extreme. This is very extreme. This is kind of like rock your world extreme, that what Jesus is saying. That we should have that sort of attachment to Jesus, that we're willing to give up everything. That nothing even comes close to the Lord. Okay. At the same time, we heard about attachment, we even heard about hating. At the same time, Jesus says, Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 to 40. Actually, 34 to 40.
But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they got together, and to put him to the test, one of them put a further question. Master, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Jesus said to him, You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment.
All right. So Jesus answered the question. The question was, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Jesus answered it. The greatest and first commandment is love God with all your heart, soul, and all your mind. All right. But then what happens? He doesn't stop the answer there. He says one more line.
The second resembles it.
So he goes on to say the second greatest commandment. Okay, they didn't ask for that, but he gives it to them anyway. So what's the second commandment?
You must love your neighbor as yourself.
You must love your neighbor as yourself. And then?
On these two commandments hang the whole law and the prophets too.
Right, and you can write down, you don't have to read it, but Mark 12, 28 to 34, and Luke 10, 25 to 28. It's the other times that Jesus talks about this commandment. And in both those times also, we see that there's different people asking. Here the Pharisees ask. Another time it says the Jews ask. Another time a lawyer asks. Okay, so in each case, the question is not what are the greatest two commandments. The question is what's the greatest commandment. But Jesus always gives both these commandments to show that these two commandments, even though there is one that is greater than the other, they are inseparable. Okay, they go together. And so in the first letter of John, chapter 4, verses 19 to 21, it says, let us love because he first loved us. Anyone who says, I love God and hates his brother is a liar. Since no one who fails to love the brother whom he can see can love God whom he has not seen. So now we have these two verses. We have Luke 14, 35 to 37, which we read, where Jesus says, no one can be my disciple without, what do they have to do? Hating father, mother, brother, sister. And now what we read that the second greatest commandment is what? Love your neighbor. And then if you say you love God and hate your neighbor, you are a liar. All right. So how do you reconcile these two things? Okay, so this is the challenge, but it's actually not a challenge. In Matthew chapter, I think Matthew chapter 10, verses 37 to 39.
No one who prefers father or mother to me is worthy of me.
Okay, so now there's a different word. It doesn't say hate. What does it say?
No one
who prefers, right? And then?
No one who prefers son or daughter to me is worthy of me.
Again, it says prefers. Okay, so this use of the word prefer clarifies that it's not hating in the sense of I do not love you at all. It's hating to show the contrast between the love we have for God versus everyone else, starting with those closest to us, that there is a big gap, all right? There's a big gap between loving God and everyone else. But we are called to love one another, okay? We are called. And so there is, sometimes we can feel a tension between detachment and love. To be so attached to God and not dependent on anything else, and especially anyone else, but then at the same time, loving. And this topic especially comes to my mind because I remember in 2000 and I think it was 2020 or 2019, okay? I was in seminary and it was the new year. So in the seminary, at the beginning of the year, we have what's called a silent retreat. Are you all familiar with a silent retreat? A silent retreat is a retreat where you're not allowed to speak. So you can't speak, you can't, there's no internet, you can't use your phones, you can't use your computer. It's just, you're completely locked out like from the outside world and communication, except for we have common prayer. So we pray together, so then you can talk. And then you go for confession, then you have to talk. And you also have meetings with a priest who's called your spiritual director, who you kind of share, what's going on. And then we were allowed to talk to the dining hall, because then they don't know what food to give you, So, but they actually know that you're on silent retreat, so they're very respectful. You just point like just one. And then we all sit in the dining hall, and all you hear is the forks and knives, like clink, 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 like because no one is saying anything. And there's like 160 of us, it's just completely quiet. So at the silent retreat, it's 5 days. Okay, so it's a long time. The first day is the harder one. But then afterwards, it's actually very nice because you really focus on what's important. So I'm going through the silent retreat, and it's the new year, so you got to make New Year's resolutions, right? And as a seminarian, we had to. It was a rule. We had to make goals like every semester. Okay, what are the goals that you want? So a goal could be, we have the 4 dimensions, and I'm sure you've heard this. Brother Bruley has probably talked about it. We have the spiritual dimension, the intellectual dimension, the human dimension, and the pastoral dimension. Okay, and you try to make a goal for each dimension. So, like a spiritual dimension goal would be, I'm going to pray a rosary every day. Okay, for this whole semester. Okay, or maybe 2 rosaries if you're, some sort of spiritual goal. That's actually, it should be kind of hard to achieve. An intellectual goal would be, I'm going to complete all the readings that are assigned to me in class. A human goal could be, I'm going to sleep before 10:30 p.m. every night. That's a human goal. It's like, something for yourself. And a pastoral goal might be something like, I'm going to wash the dishes every Wednesday, which is a big deal in the seminary because there's 160 of us. Or I'm going to clear the dish rack whenever I see something there without telling anyone. So that's like service to the community. So that's pastoral. So I went to my spiritual director and I have all my goals. I had like a whole resolution list. And one of the goals I had, one of the resolutions was, I am going to grow in detachment from everyone. Okay, because I was very attached to some people. I still am. And I said, I'm gonna just really, really exercise detachment. I'm not gonna rely on anyone. I'm just gonna be completely attached to God. And I was quite proud of that goal. I thought it was very good. It sounds very good, yeah, especially from what we read. And the priest who was with me, he heard me say that, and he's like, okay. He's like, that's very interesting, Jacob. That's great. What do you mean by detachment? Because if by detachment you mean you are going to love people less, that is the antithesis of Christianity. Or in other words, that is exactly the opposite of what Christianity is all about. So in other words, don't use detachment as an excuse to love less. Don't use detachment as an excuse to love less. We should always be growing in love. Always. If there was one characteristic that defines the Christian, what would it be? How do you know that? Sure, God is love. Yeah, but I'm talking. Why does that define the Christian, though?
Because of John 3:16.
John 3:16. That's wonderful. 14:15. Whoever. What is 14:15? Whoever loves me will keep my commandments.
The world will know you are my disciples.
Yes. Where is that? John 13:34 and 35. Right? Yeah. What does it say? John 13:34.
I give you a new commandment. Love one another. You must love one another just as I have loved you.
Okay. Keep going.
It is by your love for one another
All right. It is by your love for one another
that everyone will recognize you as my disciples.
that everyone will recognize you as my disciples. So what is the defining thing? It's the love. It's by your love that everyone will recognize that you are my disciples. So love is the most important thing. If we're not growing in love, we're doing something wrong. We have to continuously grow in love, and we always can, because in every human being is an infinite capacity to love and to be loved, to give love and to receive love. We are never satisfied when it comes to love. You always want more, and when you really love someone, you always want to give more. You can never give enough. And if any of us have ever fallen in love, we understand that. Okay, that love can never be satisfied except with God. Because God is love. God is love. And so only God can satisfy not only the desire to be loved, but also the desire to love. And that's why in that greatest commandment, Jesus said, you must love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength in Mark 12, he adds that. And that commandment is not because God needs our love. It's because we need it. We need to love that way in order to really be satisfied, to really be complete, to be fulfilled, to have that desire to love, to actually get somewhere. Because sooner or later, everything else we put before God, whether it is a thing, a job, a tool, and a person, sooner or later, that will dissatisfy us. In fact, Fulton Sheen says, whatever you put before Christ, sooner or later, that thing will disgust you. So it's not just like, this doesn't really satisfy me, but even worse, it's, this thing just disgusts me. And you see that with the life of Judas, because he put money before Christ. He sold him for 30? Is 30 pieces? 30 pieces of silver, is that? Yeah, I think 32? Okay, it was 30. It's 30, right? Yeah, 30 pieces of silver. So that's a lot of silver. I mean, it's 30 pieces, but I mean, who knows how big the pieces were, right? So he sold him for the silver, which he treasured, more than anything. We know from John chapter 12 that he was even stealing money from the apostolic purse, we call it, like from all the money that they held in common. So he really loved money. But then, when he realizes what's going to happen to Jesus, he tells the Pharisees that I've sinned, I've betrayed innocent blood, and he tries to give the money back, and they say, that's not it's not our problem, now it's your problem. And then what does he do? He throws the money. It disgusts him because he put it before Christ. So that's just money. But that happens with anything we put before Christ. And the funny thing is, it can even be a good thing. So like, for example, it could be exercise. It could even be like music. Like, it could be devotional songs even. Sometimes we get so addicted to the songs, we forget about the words. We just love the thing. It can even be the work we do. It could be broadcasting. It could be arranging the chairs. I don't know how you get attached to arrange chairs and put that before Christ, but it could be anything. Okay, so it could be decorating, the room. It could be preparing for a Christmas program. It could be arranging for retreats. It could even be giving a talk. It could be anything. It's so easy to put things before Christ very subtly, without us even noticing. And what will eventually happen is that thing will disgust us, that we will get so sick and tired of whatever we're doing or whatever we put, that we just don't want to do it anymore. And perhaps we've all experienced that at some point. It could be our jobs. That's an easy one, actually, to put. It could even be our families. Isn't that funny? Like the families that you are in charge of, that you have the duty of looking after. If you put that before Christ, disaster will ensue. All right. So we're called to be detached, but we're called to love. And the only way we can really do that properly is by the grace of God. We have to constantly pray for the grace to love properly, to love like how Jesus loved. Because although Jesus says, as we read in, what was the first verse we read? Mark? Yeah. No, what have we read? Luke 14, 25 to 27, right? Yeah. Yeah, so Luke 14, 25 to 27. We read hate, no one who hates. But then in Colossians chapter 3, verses 18 onwards, and Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 to 33, and especially verses 28 and 29, it says that husbands must love their wives as they love their own bodies. And verse 29, a man never hates his own body, but feeds it, looks after it. And that is the way Christ treats the church. So St. Paul is even, with his wisdom, fine-tuning that, or further explaining that hating is actually not hating as we think, but it's loving in a different way. Having a properly ordered love of God first, and love of everyone else afterwards. And so I'd encourage all of you, and to, as you're certainly growing in your own spiritual life, and you all are, you're all wonderful, and even the young people, it's always very inspirational for me to come here and see everyone, and see the choir and everything. And I just thought it would be nice to remind you that never lose sight of the most important thing, that no matter what duties or responsibilities you have here in the community, which you all take very seriously, which is good, and you should, if you're not growing in love, if you don't have a properly ordered detachment, if you find that you're putting things before Christ, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to reevaluate. Because the most important thing is our own growth in relationship with God, in loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and having that healthy detachment from everything else without sacrificing our love for one another. And so St. Benedict summarizes it all in his rule. St. Benedict, he founded the Benedictines, which is one of the first monks, so like these are the people who completely separate themselves from the world and live in a little monastery and, kind of close themselves out. So they exercise detachment in a very, particular way. In his rule for them, one of the key things that he mentions is never put anything before Christ. Never put anything before Christ. And so let's especially pray that, like our Blessed Mother, like Saint Benedict, like all the saints, that we may learn to always put Christ in front of everything, that we may learn to love him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves, while at the same time exercising a spirit of true Christian detachment. Praise the Lord.